Hello, everyone. Welcome to World Affairs International Career and Mentoring Webinar Series. I'm Philip Yun. I'm the CEO of World Affairs, and I hope that you and your loved ones are all safe and staying healthy in this time of sheltering in. I understand we got about 70 some people who have signed up, so we're absolutely thrilled. And we're pleased to host you for a conversation with one of my absolute favorite people, Michelle Dover. Michelle is the Director of Programs at Plowshares Fund, and full disclosure, I used to be the ED and COO there, so I know Michelle quite well. And I just really haven't seen her in a while through Zoom, and it's really fun to be able to see her face, and she's always smiling. You know, that's one of the most amazing things about her. I am so happy to have Michelle here. I have to sing her praises. I said she's one of my most favorite people, and I can't think of anyone better to start this off in terms of smarts, substance, and savvy for someone who, you know, in the position that she's in. She is going to blush. You're going to watch her blush right now of what I'm going to say. I have to, people will say this behind her back in certain ways, in a very good way. Michelle, I think you have to know, is one of the most powerful people in DC in the peace and security NGO space. I mean, she really is pretty remarkable about what she is able to do. And so what I wanted her to do is briefly say what she does, okay? And then what Plowshares Fund does. And I think you'll get a sense why I just said that. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you, Philip. And it's wonderful to see you. I absolutely am blushing, and it's such an honor to be here, especially since you have had an impact on my career. So just wait until I get to my lesson.
Oh no, okay.
So with that intro, Plowshares Fund is a foundation that's seeking to rid the world of nuclear weapons, reduce nuclear risks, and create a safer and more secure world because of it. We do that through providing support for projects in civil society, in the nonprofit space, that are aiming to get rid of the weapons that exist, prevent new weapons from coming into existence, and addressing the root causes. So all those projects you see, whether it's, you know, grassroots organizations getting you to work on approaching your members of Congress, quiet research projects on how exactly Iran should reconfigure its reactor to get rid of the plutonium pathway, or, you know, the track 2 diplomacy that's necessary to smooth out the wrinkles before you can get to a final agreement. That's the type of work that we're able to fund. And my job is, I am lucky enough to give that money away and figure out which projects can help us reach those goals.
And so for you, I mean, you talk with a lot of different people about your projects. I mean, can you give us a sense of kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, you know, I think fundamentally we are looking for projects that are going to leave the world safer than when they started. So, and it may not be a research paper, it could be a research paper, but it's really the type of projects that help advance these goals. And so whether it's, we had a great project last year, a young woman who said, I want to approach all of the frontline communities that are located in the areas where nuclear weapons were developed in the US, and help link them together, understand what their needs are, so that we can push from a local level legislation that's going to actually rehabilitate those lands and bring justice to those communities. It could be something like that. It could be something that says, you know, we have this opportunity to bring together Chinese military or ex-military officials, those who are influential in negotiations with North Korea and who have access to the highest levels of power. Can we bring them together and have honest conversations? So it really is just a range of projects. You know, it's everyone can do their part on this challenge. It's a really complicated one, and we don't assume that there's a silver bullet.
So also the women's initiative, I think, is really important because I think, well, I'm sure it's important to you. I think you're an example in the sense of the type of new perspectives that we need in the foreign security and the security related field. So maybe just really quickly talk about that.
So it comes from this place of for such a big problem like with nuclear weapons, why would we leave perspectives out? Why would we leave people out in trying to solve this problem, especially half the population? You know, Philip's so familiar with this, but when it comes to nuclear policy, it's traditionally very male dominated. And the ideas are ones that we have been hearing over and over since the 1960s. There's a highly thought of scholar in the field who will joke that people need to stop using his book to come up with ideas and go get their own. So we are trying to go get our own ideas by actually funding women, funding viewpoints from people who may not have felt like they could speak out on this, but who bring an expertise that is sorely needed and a perspective that is sorely needed in order to make that change. So we're changing the field as we're bringing in new ideas, and from a philanthropy standpoint, trying to put our money where our mouth is and fund the projects that are led by the people with those perspectives.
So why don't you kind of give us a quick sort of history about how you got to where you are right now?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? The opportunities that you just don't expect to get, but you work really hard for. So for me, I think my career has been one that's kind of summed up in this question of what is the next skill or experience I want to get. I don't have a 5-year plan. I don't have a 10-year plan. It started with, I want to work in international affairs. I have no family history. I grew up in a really rural part of the country. I didn't.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Eastern Washington, actually near the Hanford site. So nuclear weapons were actually always a part of my history, but just kind of from a different perspective. My family wasn't involved with the national labs. We didn't have necessarily that scientific or military background. But I decided this was something where, Philip, as you said, I thought I could make a difference. And so in looking at those experiences, it drove me to work some time in government, at the Department of Energy, getting a chance to actually implement policies, negotiate with other countries, see what American foreign policy looks like abroad and how we make it. I also got the chance to do research in a think tank. I sought that out because I wanted to apply the theories I had learned in school to what was actually happening. Did it make sense? And did it in such a way that it was monitoring and evaluation. Like, is this project that the US government is funding having an impact? So actually getting to apply those academic skills. And then the place I'm in now, working on both philanthropy and on advocacy, I came to Plowshares because I wanted the chance to understand how laws were made and how change was made in a society in that intersection between what we call civil society and government. What does that push and pull look like? And that's where I've had the chance over the past few years to work. So I think the other piece that's really interesting to reflect on too is, that's what happened, but there's also the question of what didn't happen. And I think as you think about your experiences, right, Philip, you've had this moment where it's, do I stay or do I go? And why do I leave? And I think, that is, if I had wanted to stay at Department of Energy and continue on in government, I could have. If I'd wanted to instead go abroad to the International Atomic Energy Agency and work from that international UN perspective, I could have. But you just, you seek out opportunities, but you also try to marry it with this sense of what's the next adventure I want to have.
So, yeah, and you can take some time about this. I'm sure that over the years, there were, you got bits of career advice, mm-hmm. You got lessons learned where perhaps you failed, and you kind of file it away and you say, okay, I'm not going to forget this. This is something that's important. And then you find yourself applying that pretty regularly as you advance in your career. Can you give us what you think are the most important ones? Maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. I mean, you tell me what they are. I mean, think about that.
I have 3 that I think of that come to mind. The first one is don't be afraid to ask. I know I have come to realize over the years that people are incredibly generous with their time and with their stories, especially in a field like this that is so relationship based. As you said, Philip, this isn't like you become a doctor, you're matched and you go. You really do have to build that network and those relationships to find out what the opportunities are and to move between positions and between corners of the field. You know, people love to talk about themselves, like, I'm here, I'm talking. But there's this element, you know, that I realized when I was doing interviews for my master's thesis. And I was interviewing people about the work they had done in Russia on cooperative threat reduction. And they were willing to spend an hour with me just telling me their stories and building that relationship. And then what they see in me and think, oh, there might be this opportunity here, or making that connection there. So I think that's the first one. Don't be afraid to ask.
And then can you give me an example in that sense where that really helped you later on in a way that
it's helped me get all of the jobs that I have.
All the jobs.
So there was the job that I got going into an NGO to actually apply the academic research to the practical work. That was because of someone I had worked closely with as an intern and who I had talked with about my research and gotten her advice. When she had that job opening, she called me. I was still at Department of Energy. She said, this would be perfect for you. Huh. And that's how I jumped.
And then for you then, as I think about this, I mean, you're not naturally shy, okay? At least it doesn't seem that way, but it's an effort, right?
It's an effort. Oh, I am just barely on the side of introvert. I can be very extroverted in conversations like this, but I recharge by myself. But I think for me, it was getting over the fear that people wouldn't want to talk to me or I would be asking too much. You're not asking too much. So, and you should always make the ask.
Okay, great. Well,
the second one is every decision you make the first time feels like the end of the world. And guess what? It's not. And you will keep making these decisions over the course of your career. And so it's hard for me to get out of my head sometimes, but when I make that choice to, leave government, I was like, oh my God, is this going to be what I do forever? Can I never get back in? And just because it's the first time I've made that decision. And of course, as you keep making it, it gets a little easier every time. Maybe not super easy, but you just realize that life will go on and you're going to have a variety of opportunities, especially if you're working hard and searching for them. And then the final piece of advice, I've sometimes gotten the advice of, know your brief. And I think it's true, but I think with a modification.
Okay,
yes,
they know your brief. What does that mean?
Know your brief means know the topic, study it, be an expert, be able to, talk about your domain, your area. And I actually think the people skills are more important. So I have a good story about this. When I was interviewing for the job in government, they asked me, my future boss asked me, so can you name the articles of the Nonproliferation Treaty? And I was like, no, I can't. I can tell you what the grand bargain is, the fundamentals of the treaty, why it exists. I can't tell you the exact articles, but I can Google it. Like if you need me to research it, I can go find it for you. And I got the job. Oh, sorry, that's on my end.
Oh, that's your end. Okay.
I got the job. And, I think that was a moment for me when I realized I didn't have to have all the answers. I had to be able to connect with people. So those are the pieces of advice that have really worked for me.
Okay. So tell me, do you have some examples? And I'll give you, so successes are always great. Okay. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a couple circumstances where you think you completely bombed? I don't know if that's really happened to you, but I think if I've got a feeling you stretch a lot. So where do you feel like you haven't succeeded where you thought you would?
Oh, so interviews are the one. While we're talking about interviews, you just I've had interviews at development agencies or other organizations in the field where it was very clear that I was bringing a set of skills that they did not need. And it was you know, and it's a moment where you're in, and it's an interesting feeling, right? To be in the middle of the interview and realize I am bombing this. Like, it's not necessarily because I'm not trying hard, but it is just not a good connection.
Yeah.
And picking yourself up afterwards, saying, you know, I learned a lot. It's another moment to practice my interview skills and keep going is I think one. I think the other time, and this is where I fail, I think, on a more regular basis, because I'm not constantly interviewing for jobs. I'm quite happy at Plowshares.
Yeah.
Is, you know, when I get pitched projects, and Philip, you remember this, you know, we'll have a project that I might be interested in. And I'll start asking around in the organization of, okay, you know, with certain people in leadership or on other teams, do you think this works? Like, do you think this fits with our mission? Like, what do you think of this idea? And there have been projects where I'm like, but it would be so great. And everyone's like, that's a terrible idea. And they were right.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's been cases where I'm not going into details. There are cases where we would fund something or not fund something, and I would find out later that, you know, it didn't have the impact I expected, or it would not have had the impact I expected. Or it ended up being extremely complicated in a way that I don't think was a good use of my time. And in those moments, I sit back and try to figure out what was it in my analysis that really lent me to hold on to it tight. And sometimes it's, you know, I really sympathize or see myself in the project lead, or it's an idea that I had once upon a time. And I think being really aware of my own, it's really forced me to become aware of my own biases.
Okay.
Which I continue to discover, but it's, you know, a constant process.
So, you know, along the lines of our audience and the people who are there, I'm wondering, you know, we're really in a very uncertain time right now. As I said, we're all kind of thinking about what's going to be happening in the world. Part of your job is to kind of see what's going on in the future, but, you know, in the space of nuclear weapons and where we're going. But I also know that you have a much broader perspective on things. So as you look on careers and, you know, what things are going to happen, I mean, are there kind of certain tools that you think people, younger people are going to need as they start, you know, moving forward? What are kinds of the things that you know, what is going to be necessary in the next 10 years or so? What do you think?
In the next 10 years, I mean, I think that some of the trends you're already seeing in terms of flexibility in how you engage, you know, understanding what communication tool to use. I'm always amazed at the number of people who think that email is the only way you should communicate, and you should never pick up the phone and call someone. You know, I think investing in understanding how to use them and what to use them for, not just the technology, but again, going back to the people skills, integrating that into a relationship is going to be incredibly important, especially if we go in and out of lockdowns over the next year, the next few years. I think we're at, and I think there also needs to be, it's a hard skill to develop, but I think young people in general are it's something that they can actually lean into, is a willingness to question. Because what I see right now, it actually really reminds me of this moment that we had back in the 90s when the USSR fell and there were all these nuclear weapons that were unguarded or poorly guarded in the territory. And you saw this moment where both countries did not know what to do. And so those people who had already been working on projects to create stronger ties between the countries and between the scientists in particular saw an opportunity, put forward their plan, that was picked up, and that's what became the Cooperative Threat Reduction Program. It got rid of so much nuclear material. And
give a little bit of background on what that actually was.
So American scientists went over to Russia, you know, and worked closely with Russian scientists to put in new measures of security, convinced countries to give up weapons usable material. I think, Google the Sapphire Project if you have time on your hands, and really helped us understand, and get confidence in whether or not nuclear technology was going to leave the former Soviet Union and go in other parts of the world, other countries who very much wanted it. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say though is you had this, the people who were working at that time have told me how there was this moment of uncertainty. And that was when they were most able to affect change. And what we saw is those ideas could be put forward from like roughly 1990 through 1995 or 6. And then the window was closed. And those, whatever policies had been put in were ossified into the relationships and into the system, and it was hard to change. I think we're in the beginning of another one of those moments where so much about our reality has shifted that people don't know what comes next, what those systems should look like, what tools they should be using. And it's a moment in which they're willing to get rid of the old way of doing things and consider something new. And so for those who are starting out right now, publishing, podcasting, getting your voice and ideas out there is really, really important to have a say in however that new system is rebuilt.
So what, this is one that's very specific. What experiences or classes in high school or in college prepared you for your career? What were the skills or things that you thought were really, really important?
All of your writing classes will be incredibly important, and you should be pickier than I was about which writing classes you take. Because I have discovered over the course of my career that you can learn almost any topic on the fly. It takes a little elbow grease, but you can do it. The one thing that is very hard to do is to learn how to write. And so while you have the opportunity and those skill sets, learning to write for different audiences is incredibly important. Funny enough, another college class that has made a big difference in my life was an honors genetics class that I took for a year that taught me how to read a scientific paper as a non-scientist. And so being able to be conversant in, or at least understand how a very technical field operates has been really, really important for me in a field where the military and science intersect with international affairs. And then, I think the philosophy and international affairs classes that I took initially were really great background. I really enjoyed them and they've been generally useful. But I think the final class, if you can get into one, is a negotiation class. I focused my master's. I was in conflict resolution and with a focus on negotiation. And those are just very practical skills that have served me well in every single aspect of my life, professional and otherwise. So those are the ones I found most useful.
So did you find that an advanced degree is important or not important? How do you feel about that?
It depends on why you are going for the advanced degree. So for me, I didn't want to go for the advanced degree to get the same degree I got as an undergrad. I was very specific that I wanted the negotiation skills and I wanted to understand how conflict is both driven and mitigated. So I think you should, you're buying a small house if you're paying for it. So you should be treating it with the same level of thought in terms of why. It's been helpful in my career as I've progressed. So I do think in international affairs, it's something to consider, but also to consider the schools that offer scholarships. I was able to do mine on almost a full ride. So I think, asking around, figuring out how to get work to pay for it, or whether a specific school will fund most of it, is really important in addition to the content.
Okay. And then the other question someone asked you is, what inspires you in your work? Is it necessary, people talk about passion, which is important. I mean, is that essential? So just curious your take on this.
I don't know if passion is essential. I am very passionate about my job. I love it. That's where it fits into my life. The best moments of my job is when I get to see someone go do the thing that they said they were going to do, and then see the impact and see the response. So I was telling Philip before the call, one of our grantees, 38 North, that we've supported for a long time, they put out satellite analysis this weekend that said everyone needs to calm down when talking about whether Kim Jong-un is alive or dead. We see his train in the countryside, and their reporting actually prompted unnamed officials in the US and South Korea to respond, to tamp down some of the rumors of, well, we don't think he's dead. And so, getting to see the response, I think, has been really important. So I think for me, maybe the curiosity is probably a bigger driver than the passion, but it always feels good to get a win.
Okay, that's great. So what advice would you give to someone who's interested in international relations, but does not know yet what they want to pursue in a career field? What would you say?
I would say figure out the way you learn, whether it's watching films, reading novels, reading nonfiction, talking to people, meeting to people, volunteering, and put an international twist on it. And so, taking what you know about yourself and what your natural interests are, and exploring, whether it's through internships, whether it's through people where you're like, you have an interesting career, I would love to know how you did that, and having those coffee chats with them, I think is a really great way to start. And to start writing, start doing it. You don't actually have to wait. There's great outlets like Inkstick Media that you should check out, where younger people are putting out really strong op-eds and articles. So I recommend to explore by doing.
What college did you go to? And do you think that it was super important to getting to where you are now? How important do you think is necessary to go to a high-level college?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I have known I wanted to do international affairs since my cousins were sent to war in Iraq. And I discovered that there were no WMD there. They were lying. And I got very angry. And I thought, no, I don't want this to ever happen again. Can I somehow participate? And so I am one of those kind of oddball cases where I knew that this was a topic I wanted to work on. I didn't know how. And so that did factor into the school I picked. And in that sense, the school helped in that it had an international affairs program that was fairly well respected. It's the University of Denver, the Corbell School. And I picked it as well because I wanted a specific type of study abroad experience that would let me go for a longer time and gave me additional support, academically to be abroad. But does that mean you need to go to a high-level school? I don't think you do. I mean, I didn't go to a school on the East Coast, which is where I now work, and I think a lot of people tend to think of. There's some obviously my family's from California, so there's some very, very good schools in California that also have this. I think what's been more important to me is the professors that I found. And I know there are good professors at a lot of different schools. I would say if you are looking at international affairs, it's useful to go to the APSIA website. I believe it's the American Professional International School Association, something like that, APSIA. They rank schools or at least have a list of the ones that do international affairs. So if that's what you're thinking of and just more broadly, it's helpful, but it's by no means necessary.
So another question that someone asked, what do you think about internships? I mean, Plowshares Fund has a lot of internships. as one way. I mean, what's your, how do you use interns and what should they be looking for? And, what's your view on that as a way of getting in?
First of all, I think internships should be paid.
Yes.
And so I'm very proud to say that Plowshares has paid internships. I think that they are a very useful place to build office credibility. Can you show up to work on time and interact with your colleagues in a professional manner? No, I'm quite serious. Do you answer your emails 90% of the time? Like these really basic things that I know when I was starting out, people had questions of whether or not I was able to, if I had the experience necessary to do certain work, and being able to point to those types of internships was helpful. But I think and for those, it's, again, kind of the very basics of like, learn how to be in an office space. Or in a field workspace, if that's where it is. I think the one place where internships become really specifically important is if you are looking to do field work abroad. Starting that early and getting that experience is really necessary if you want to go into development work. So,
so why don't you tell us what you mean by development work?
What I mean by development work is work funded by the USAID, the Agency for International Development, that does work either helping develop economies, supporting good governance, it could be public health, all of those things that are part and parcel of US foreign policy and foreign relations that are really important to stability and security. So, when it comes to sending people to work abroad, I think companies like to see that you've been able to function in those spaces. So that's where those types of internships can be really helpful.
Okay, great. So we got a few more questions coming in too, which are going to, so one is, so international affairs and peace and security and conflict, as well as philanthropy, is something that this person is very, very interested in, but they already have a graduate degree in business. So for people who are post-grad, what advice might you have for making a career switch without already having a degree in international relations? Is it absolutely necessary to get a degree in that field to make the switch?
Absolutely not. So when, if you have a degree in business, you have management skills and finance skills and an understanding of how the private sector works that is very, very useful, whether for nonprofits or for the USG. I think what can be helpful is looking for specific fellowships. I believe there's some offered through the US government from time to time, or that you can find that would let you try out working in government. There's a innovation fellowship, I believe, through the White House that at least used to exist. I know some people who've done that. But I think, being able to identify the skill sets that are transferable, and then putting that forward as the reasons you want to make the switch, but then being able to back it up with some of the either topic interest or personal interest that is driving you into that space is really important. I think the final piece is in making a switch is building out that relationship network, getting to know who's in the field, what organizations are doing what, can go a long way to helping you get in the door on interviews.
Yeah, so let me just sort of underscore, I think you're absolutely right. I think, you point out fellowships are a really good opportunity for people. The government has the White House Fellows, they have all these different, and there are other fellowships that exist at universities, but also at nonprofits, which I think may be a good way for you to get some money, maintain, some modicum of, an income, and yet still sort of switch in that way. I think one of the things that are really important is that it's okay to go backwards and sideways in order to go forward. And I think there's this myth here that people, have to continually, keep on going forward. And the other thing that I just thought about that I'll add, because someone had asked here, one other way to figure out what you want to do if you don't want to do, is you work for somebody who is relatively senior, okay, who is going to, because of being an assistant, I guess is the best way to describe it. You're going to see a lot of things that you wouldn't normally see otherwise. And then that's a good opportunity for you then to kind of pick and choose what you do like. And if you have a good enough relationship, then, chances are you'll get the opportunity to do more of that kind of work. Yeah.
I think the other thing too is having good bosses and good supervisors and good managers is essential if you want to stay in the field. I've heard the phrase that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And so I think also being really cognizant of the situation that you're in and how you're working and the relationships there is also really important as you figure out what you like and don't like, because that can help drive it.
Okay, so I think we're going to be able to get to all these questions. We got about 10, 15 more minutes, so this is great. So let's see, let me ask another question. And what fields of study are in demand in your field right now, do you think?
I don't know if the field knows what the answer to that question is. What is in demand? I mean, absolutely, international affairs is always a plus. I'm always interested in additional, if you have a science background and you actually understand the physics or the engineering or the genetics or the biology behind whatever WMD you were working on is incredibly important. I think business is one that we are going to need more and more of. The nonprofit field is grappling with how do you create sustainable small businesses, essentially, when you don't have, HR people and finance people are the last people that you hire, even though you need a talent scout. You need someone who can plan for the future or how to shepherd your resources. But I think it's a hard one to answer though, because I'm answering the question of what we're looking for right now. And really for all of you, it's thinking about what are we going to need 5 years from now? So is that different types of communications? Is that, how we lead in this new world? I mean, in that sense, there may be some element of we're building those degrees and those fields today, and we'll only be able to name them or identify them a few years from now.
Yeah, so there were a lot of people who were asking about the best degree for international affairs, public policy, public administration. Do you think that, it's nice to have, but do you think they're absolutely necessary? Are they necessary?
No, because I don't think you can take any degree and put international on it, right? Yeah. There's, all of the problems that we find here in the US or the economies or the areas of work, those exist internationally. There's an international bent to it. Yeah. And so I think it really is pursuing the things you're good at and that you enjoy and you think you could work for a long time on, or at least, to start out with, because Philip, this, most people will change their career. And what they studied may not be what they actually work in. I know quite a few lawyers. Yeah. Who no longer practice law. So in that sense, I don't think you need to stress as much about the degree and really more focus on the skills and the critical thinking and the analysis that you're bringing.
So the really interesting thing that I think you just raised, and Bill Perry, former Secretary of Defense, you have Ash Carter, who is another former Secretary of Defense. They were scientists. Bill was a math major and Ash Carter was a physics major. And, those technical hard skills are really important because it's really hard for someone like me at age, 60 to become a world-class physicist, right? So you got to do that earlier. But the soft skills come, right? You have those capabilities, and those two individuals have the soft skills that they were able to then make a career shift. And it could be the same for someone who was asking about financial expertise. I mean, that's very much needed, right? And yet you can transition.
But I also want to say, just give a plug for the humanities. I'm doing a lot of work related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I had, as a part of my work, someone give me a test on how I did in terms of cross-cultural communication and empathy. And that was probably one of the more stressful tests I've ever taken. And, at the end of it, they're like, okay, here are things you can do to actually build your skill set in this. And one of the things is reading novels, going to plays, going to museums, things that take you out of yourself, your perspective, and put you in the shoes of others and expand your thinking and expand your creativity. So it's not just about the sciences. It's also about, the humanities and how we think. I mean, there's a space for all of these different types of skills.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm a firm believer in that. And so one person asks a question like, as students, how can we start to take action, become involved in international affairs, whether in government, business, or nonprofits, while we're enrolled in full-time class or working part-time? And especially when many of these positions in government and nonprofit internships are unpaid. So this is a perfect pitch in certain ways for Plowshares Fund, right? I mean, one of the things that I love about Plowshares is that we started the whole notion of venture philanthropy. The organization was venture philanthropy before even everyone knew that word existed. So why don't you talk about that? Because I think that this is a pool of people that are listening who may potentially be people who may want to submit a proposal to you, maybe, right? And how does that work?
So this is, and talk about, equity issues in philanthropy of who gets to talk to a foundation program officer, who's allowed in that door. So if you go to Plowshares website, we do have an inquiry form. The program team will get back to you, in which if you have an idea that fits with our funding priorities, which we list out transparently on our website, you are welcome and encouraged to pitch it. And we are happy to engage with you in that conversation. I will say we get a lot more projects than we are able to fund, but we like to hear the ideas. We like to learn. One of the projects that I've done at Plowshares that I was really proud of in terms of, and it was a part of our women's initiative, was we held a proposal call for people who had never led on a project from Plowshares before. And to really try to get to to your point, Philip, of people who have new ideas and haven't been able to share them. And so you can find the work related on our website. A lot of it was organizing work, because that is, I think where a lot of people's heads are at right now and where they're seeing opportunities. I think the final piece, though, I would say for students, as they're thinking about their work, think broadly about international affairs. Is there a business association or a chamber of commerce that has an international focus and a paid internship? Is there does the hospital need translators? And you have a language. I mean, there are so many ways you can just think about, your own work and how you're doing and try to bring that international lens to it. And to think about it that way and not just go for the more obvious or, internships at the UN or State Department, which I'm told are fabulous.
So Michelle, I wanted to ask you, tell people the scale of the kinds of money that, the organization gives away. I know that God bless her. We just heard that, our former chair, Mary Estrin, had passed away, and she left a scholarship of some kind to help with certain kinds of things. Some people may be of the perception that we're talking, hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever.
Yes.
Give them a sense of the scale that you're talking about.
So we give away grants, and Philip has signed some of these checks before, as small as $500 and as much as $500,000. We don't have a limit per se, but we give away about between 4 and 5 million every year. Plowshares is unique among foundations in the nuclear space in that we raise the money that we give away. And so we like to think that our ideas are road tested. Will people donate to fund this work? Do they also think that these ideas have merit and that these strategies will bear fruit? So, you know, it doesn't have to be many hundreds of thousands of dollars for a foundation to consider.
Yeah, and then one of the things I wanted to point out that is great about Plowshares Fund, and why, again, you know, Michelle is highly sought after for a variety of reasons, is that Plowshares Fund also is kind of an imprimatur of, it's like the good housekeeping seal. You know, the organization road tests ideas, right? And so if you get money from Plowshares Fund, what happens?
It means that others may look at your ideas and say, well, it has the backing of a foundation. So if Plowshares was willing to take the lead, maybe we should too. You know, we've now funded, I believe, 4 or 5 Nobel Peace Prize winners before they received the prize. And I think one of the other gratifying parts of my job is the number of people who've come up to me and said, you know, I received my first grant from Plowshares, and this is where I've landed since. And this is the impact that I've been able to make. And just very much in gratitude for what Plowshares has been able to do. And for me, it's really an incredible moment and just a reflection of the broader community that Plowshares entails.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our time. And I just wanted to ask, is there, you know, any couple of closing thoughts for people who are out there, or our high school, college, and folks who are, you know, just into their career?
You're getting in at an incredible moment of change. And, you know, don't listen to people like me. Build your future. You know, trust your instincts and go. Because right now, I think if you know what you want to do, don't waste time trying to decide if you should move in that direction. You know, I think for me, the pandemic has shown, just as, you know, we've moved into various stages, how important it was for me to you know, be in the place I wanted to be with the people I wanted to be. And I think the same goes for the career right now. Don't think that you have to wait out on the sidelines because you're a student. Did you know that members of Congress count the number of phone calls that come in? They have very thin skin. And so your policymakers will listen to you if you pick up the phone to call them, or if you write the op-ed. Or if you know, intern for them, or there's just so many ways that you can get involved beyond just voting. And I think becoming a global citizen, you should take those actions, especially now. Okay.
All right, so why don't I close with that? Michelle, thanks so much. I mean, one of the things that we're trying to do here at Plowshare, at World Affairs, right? Oh my gosh, at World Affairs is, you know, we wanted to, the whole idea, and I'm explaining this to Michelle, was, you know, we're no longer, we're trying to get away from the idea of people coming in and that we have skills and tools and ideas that we can offer people that are going to help them navigate, you know, what's really a very uncertain time right now. And I wanted to thank you for showing all of us, you know, how you're doing it, what you've done. I think people have found it quite interesting, and I think it'll be very valuable for them. And I think people kind of realize why, you know, I feel like you're one of the favorite people that I've had that I've been able to work with. So thanks so much. I wanted to then let everyone know that next week, May 6th, we have another career mentor night with Jessica Lee, who is now at the Quincy Institute. They are a grantee of Plowshares Fund, someone that I've worked with. And if there's a theme here, My own thing is I want to get more women, and I want to get more other folks involved in security issues. And I think there's a real way to do that. And so Jessica has a very interesting career as well. And that'll be at 4:30 as well, Pacific time. And then I was asked to invite all of you to follow the World Affairs Education Program on Instagram at World Affairs for updates and events details. Okay, so thank you.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Participating with groups like World Affairs and these education programs are what taught me how international affairs works. So there's a final plug. It's definitely use those resources because they're out there.
Okay. Thanks so much. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you hopefully next week. Bye.